What's going on, Sto Nation? In this video, I'm going to show you the heating mod that I got done at Rixen when I was there doing a podcast with Jim Rixen. So if you haven't seen that video, Jim talks about the heating system in and out and everything that you'd ever want to know. He dropped a couple bombshells that you definitely need to check out. So with that, what I'm going to do is that I'm finally in a place where it's cold enough to test it out. Right now, I'm outside of Flagstaff, and the highs have been in the upper 30s, low 40s, and the lows have been in the teens. So the next couple nights, it's forecasted to be anywhere from 11 to 18 degrees. And I wanted to do this experiment when it's really cold outside to be able to give you the most real-world expectations if you decide to get this mod. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with this experiment, but before I get into how I'm going to conduct it, I want to show you the heating mod. So here is my heater mod, and as you can see, I have two vents. So this is the original vent, and Mr. Jim Rixen actually drilled this hole himself. So the way that this is all set up is that the 2019 through the 2021s have a one faceplate system. So you have the fan back here and it blows through one vent, which is this one. So what we did is that we took that one faceplate out and switched it with a two faceplate out and then ran ducting from the second faceplate hole to here. So that is how that is set up. So this is what the inside underneath the Groove Lounge that the Espar heater looks like. There's the one duct. And then there's the container that holds a glycol, the heat exchanger. And there's a pump that pumps the glycol to the gray water tank to keep it warm so it doesn't freeze. So the one thing I like about these vents, and I don't know if you know about this, but they're omnidirectional, so you can actually turn the vents and angle them in any direction that you want. So if you want it to blow this way, you just literally rotate the swivel like that, and then you aim the air that way. So same thing with this side, it does the omnidirectional airflow as well. And if you didn't know, the new 2022s actually have a second vent now, because that was one of the big complaints. So the second vent runs behind the shower pan and out through the back, and the vent is over by where the water panel is at. So I will say that even without knowing how this is going to turn out, I would still get this mod, and I'll tell you why. The first reason is that it's much quieter when it's on the high setting. So if you think about it, instead of having that fan push all that air out of one hole, you now have two holes that push the same amount of air. And so just in that, it's going to be more efficient airflow, thus it's going to be a lot quieter. Now don't get me wrong, it's not going to be as quiet as if you were to put it on the low setting, but it is significantly quieter, and that's important to me because it allows me to sleep a little bit better, because as most of you know, I use the Groove Lounge as my bed. So having all that air getting used to being pushed and that loud sound of coming on and all you hear is well, now it's more like, so that's the first reason. The second reason is because now you have a dual climate control. And what I mean by that is that each vent, if you didn't know, can rotate 360 degrees, and then you can aim the vent in any direction. And so you can have one vent aiming toward the rear, and then if you're with another person, or for my instance, Kimchi, he sits in his little cockpit seat up here in the front, I can rotate the other vent and have it point at him. And so that way the entire van is being heated in a much more efficient manner. Okay, so the way that I'm going to conduct this experiment is pretty simple. It's going to last over 2 nights, And the first night, what I'm going to do is only use one vent, and that's the original vent that comes with the Storyteller. So on the second night, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, instead of just one vent facing the rear, I'm going to have both of the vents facing the rear. And because I took the Dreamweaver bed out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this temperature reader all the way to the back, closest to the rear doors as possible, where that cold air can stagnate. So there are 5 things that I'm going to measure twice a day for both nights. I'm going to take the first measurement tonight, which will be 7 p.m., and then I'll take the second measurement at 7 a.m., and then I'll repeat the following day. So remember, the first night is one vent, second night is both vents. And so basically with those 5 measurements, I'm going to compare and see if we can see if there's any difference in the temperature and the efficiency of the heater. So the 5 measurements, the first one is going to be the outside temperature. The second is going to be this, which will be located at the back of the van. And then the third and fourth are going to be Bluetooth temperature settings that I have. So the third measurements are going to be one that's stuck underneath the galley. And then the fourth measurement will be the other Bluetooth temperature sensor that I have, which is over inside the compartment where you can access the water pump. And the fifth is going to be the furnace hours that are used that night. So I don't really know how this is going to pan out. I think it'll just make it more efficient in regards to that the heater won't have to work as hard. I'm not sure if it'll actually make the van warmer, but I don't know, who knows? So there are a couple hacks that you need to know that I'm going to do. The first one is that I'm going to line all the doors minus the cabin, so that means the sliding door and the rear doors, with towels to help prevent that cold air from coming in. The second hack that I'm going to do is I'm going to use these thermal curtains that I got off of Amazon, and I'm going to totally block the cabin. So if you do a lot of cold weather camping, I highly recommend these thermal curtains because it just gives you a really nice barrier. And you got to remember, the biggest point of where all the cold air will come in is the windows. And so if I can just eliminate the side door windows and then the biggest window, the front windshield, that totally helps with the efficiency of keeping the van warm in really cold weather. And then the last hack that I would typically do, but I'm not going to do for this experiment, is that I would leave the inverter on overnight. Because you got to remember, the inverter, when you leave it on, even if you're not using it, it's still on, and it will still create that heat. So, but again, I'm not going to do it because I just want to see how the heater functions without really any outside electronic help. Okay, it's a little after 7 on December the 17th, and here is the control panels, and this is the settings I'm going to have for both tonight and tomorrow night, but the thermostat will be set at 65, and the only reason why I have it at 65 is because that's just the temperature I like it when I go to bed. And then the furnace will be on, and then the system button will be on. And then as of right now, I had to turn the fan off because the heater was going, and so I didn't want it to mask my voice. But anyways, I'm going to turn that back on to high once I get done recording. And then to show you the setup down here with the vents. All right, so as you can see, the modified vent is closed, and the original vent is open, but it's opened up at a 45-degree angle aiming up at the bed. So theoretically the air should hit right about there, which is where I think most people would want their air flow to go to, since they're sleeping up there. But anyways, and then we'll come back here for the measurements. So as you can see, under the sink it's reading 59.67 degrees, and the water pump area is 50.22 degrees. And then the external temperature reader is 64.7. So I think that's a little bit on the warm side just because I've been running my electronics. So we'll see what it's like tomorrow morning. So then to go out to the final measurement, hey Kimchi. Oh, this is the, this is how I use my thermal curtains. So as you can see, it blocks off the entire cabin. Oh, and the one thing I did forget to mention is that I have another hack that I meant to tell you guys in the beginning, but I forgot. But basically what that hack is I'm trying to get a light over here so you can see, but I leave the water, but I leave the door to the water pump open, so that way it helps get air into there. And so if you're in really, really cold weather, I think most people will just put a fan that comes in this way and blows into there so you don't get your water pump frozen. But anyways, so that's the other hack I forgot to tell you about. So let's go check the outside temperature. Hey, Kimchi. Let's see here. Sorry for the rough camera. Alright. So I'm just going to use the Mercedes temperature gauge here. And so we're looking at right now 39 degrees. Whew. It's cold. I can feel it too. Alright, so this is it. I'm interested to see what it looks like tomorrow morning. Okay, good morning. It's the next day, December 18th, just about 7 a.m. and the settings are all the same. And let's go check out our measurements here. So the one thing I forgot to talk about when I was doing the measurements last night was that I forgot to talk about the runtime on the furnace. So we're at 992 and 38 minutes. And I believe last night's runtime was 981 and almost 30 minutes as well. So that means that it ran for almost 11 hours straight. So the underneath the sink, it's almost 53 degrees, and at the water pump, it's getting close to 48 degrees. And then over here, we're holding strong at 65.2 degrees. Oh, it just went down. But anyways, what's interesting is that I woke up early and I took the temperature and I placed the thermometer right here where this is at, and then that read at 48.6 degrees, which I thought was interesting because it's the same temperature as this almost. And then also, since I woke up early, when I went to go feed Kimchi, I noticed that it's really cold over here, and so I put the thermometer right there where that little bell is, and that read 50.1 degrees. So I'm starting to think if the air isn't directly blowing in that direction, everything else is going to be cold. All right, let's go see how cold it is outside. Grab the keys. Sorry about that. Oh, Siri. All right. Holy cow, everything's frosted over. All right. Let's turn this bad boy on. Holy cow, it's really cold. Okay, so we are looking at 27 degrees. So it's not as cold as I thought it was gonna get, but it's still pretty cold. And then the one thing that I wanted to explain just real quick that I forgot to yesterday, that is that I'm purposely putting the thermometer here because theoretically, if someone has a bed right there, then air is going to be blocked, especially if there's two people sleeping on the bed. And so I left my monitor here to basically mimic airflow blockage, if that makes sense. Okay, here are the results from last night from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And keep in mind, this is just using one vent. So last night at 7 p.m., it was 39 degrees, and then this morning it was 27, so we lost 12 degrees. And all these degrees are in Fahrenheit, by the way. The inside temp actually gained a half a degree. Underneath the sink, it dropped 6.75 degrees, and then the water pump compartment, it dropped 2.36 degrees. But what I find interesting here is that the furnace ran for 11 hours and 15 minutes. So that means that that thing was burning almost the entire time. So I don't know if running the furnace all night long is a bad thing. I think what it will do, if anything, obviously, is if you run it all night long, all the time in cold temperatures, it's just going to chalk up your hours to where you need to get maintenance sooner. But in the podcast with Jim, Mr. Rixen, he did say that the new furnaces are robust and they can take these hours. So take it as you will, but I just find it very interesting that it ran all night long. So because of that, when I do the experiment tonight, I'm going to aim the second vent parallel with the ground, if that makes sense. So one vent will be shooting up the same direction in a 45-degree angle. The other vent will be parallel with the ground. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I found interesting that it was pretty cold where the rear doors meet at the lowest point. So much so that it was actually colder than the compartment where you access the water pump. So I'm wondering if that second vent can help mitigate the coldness, and then obviously heat rises. So maybe I'm thinking that that airflow will go through and hit the rear doors, and then the heat will rise up and keep that temperature higher so you guys can stay warmer. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out for tonight. Okay, it is the second night, and it is almost 7 o'clock on December 18th, and all the settings are still the same from the previous night. And let me show you how I have the vent set up now. So, as I mentioned earlier, the modified vent is parallel with the ground, pointing that way, and then the stock vent is pointing in the exact same direction as last night. Nothing's changed. So that's the configuration. And then let's go take a look at the measurements and the readings. So right now, underneath the sink is reading 56 degrees, and the water pump compartment is reading 51. And we have 994 hours and 57 minutes. And then it's reading 66 degrees inside the van. Now let's go see what the temperature is outside. Hi, Kimchi. Say hi to everyone. He's like, what are you doing, Mom? You crazy. Here we go. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so it's 28 degrees. I think that's almost 10 degrees less than what it was last night. So, I mean, it definitely feels cold today, but so we'll see how low it gets tonight. All right, good morning. It is a little after 7 a.m. on December 19th, and it is the last day that we're going to take measurements. Before I forget, I woke up early again and I took the measurements right down there again, and that read at 52.9 degrees. And then over here, it was actually surprisingly 44 degrees. So, which I think is lower than yesterday. So, anyways, but let's go ahead and take a look at the other measurements here. And so underneath the sink, we're reading 50.45 degrees. The water pump is 48.76 degrees, and runtime we're looking at 1,007 and 4 minutes. And then our temperature is 69 degrees. And let's go check out the outside temperature. Hey, Kimchi. Say hi to everyone. You're a movie star. All right, let's go see what it's like outside. Oh. Whew, holy cow, it's cold. Oh my gosh. Let's see what we got. Oh man, 13 degrees. Definitely chilly outside. So here's the conclusion for the second night. So from 7 p.m. last night to 7 a.m. this morning, we had a negative 16 degree drop in temperature. And then we had a positive 3 degrees inside the cabin. And then we had a negative 5.74 degree drop underneath the sink and a negative 2.25 degree drop in the water pump compartment. And then we ran the furnace 12.12 hours. And then I didn't take the measurements over by the rear doors or the front passenger seats in the evening yesterday, so I didn't do it again today. And I don't think it's really relevant because I think what we want to really show is how cold it gets during the coldest time of the day. So again, the temperature by the rear doors was 52.9 degrees, and then over by the passenger seat, over by Kimchi's food bowl, was 44.2 degrees. Okay, so this is the wrap-up of all the data and what I made out of it. So in comparison from the first night to the second night, there was a negative 4 degrees outside, which I think is significant because the second night was actually colder. And we actually gained 2.5 degrees from the first night to the second night, which again I think is significant because again it was colder outside. So if it was the same temperature, my assumption is that we'd gain around 3 to 3.5 degrees. And then underneath the sink, we had a positive gain of 1 degree compared to the first night. And then for under the water pump, we had very minimal change in that, but it was still positive. It wasn't negative. And for the furnace, we actually ran it almost an hour more. I would say it's probably about 52 minutes more than we did the previous night. So I don't know what to make out of that, to be honest, because we got higher temps, but we also ran the furnace more, which I don't know why, because the thermostat was set at 65 the entire time. So, I don't know. And then the temperature for the bottom of the rear doors was a gain of 4.3 degrees, which supports my hypothesis of running the second vent parallel with the ground. It actually did make the ground warmer. And again, it was in colder weather. So the one thing that is throwing me off is this right here, which is the almost negative 6 degree drop that we had in the front of the van over by where Kimchi's food bowl was. And the more I think about it, I think it's due to the fact that the curtain might have not covered the entire area as well as last night. But either way, it was colder up front. And you got to remember that the thermostat is located on the opposite side of the van of where we're taking all the measurements. And so the thermostat obviously is right behind the driver's seat. And that's where it was coldest, which I think explains why the furnace ran longer, because it was just reading colder temperatures. So it kept blasting air out. That's what I think happened, because I'm trying to figure out why that furnace ran for almost an additional 50 to 53 minutes. So that's my hypothesis on that. So overall, I think having this heater mod is a must-have if you're a snow bunny. I think that having a warmer temperature in one of the coldest parts of the van when it was a colder night speaks volumes. I think it, regardless of if it ran an extra hour, I'm not too concerned about it because, like I said earlier, I think there was just an air gap somewhere between the curtains that was letting cold air in, and it was throwing off the thermostat. So anyways, yeah, I highly recommend it. So this mod, if you go to Rixen Enterprises and do it, I think it's going to be around $300 to $350 parts and labor. So, which isn't bad, to be honest. Mine was a little bit high because when they went in, they found a bunch of leaks that they had to obviously fix. And so it took longer and it took more parts. But you should expect around $300 to $350 for this mod. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next time, I can't wait to share the road with you.